Welcome back to another week of Whether or Not podcast. I'm your host, meteorologist Scott Sumner, sponsored by Ford. Welcome back in. And boy, we're getting close to that time where we're now getting into April. This is the severe storms period. And because of that and because of what happened last weekend, I wanted to bring on my guest. We've had him on before a couple years ago, Jared Geyer. He is the lead forecaster for the Severe Storms Prediction Center. Jared, thanks for spending a few minutes of time with us today.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. Thank you again. We always wish perhaps it could be under different circumstances, not on the heels of a severe weather season that's only going to get, be more of a factor and increase as we go through the spring. Yeah. But appreciate you and your followers, listeners having me on, and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. But before we get to some of that and what you do, I want to talk about and ask you, how did you get into the position you are now? What made you interested in weather to begin with?
Well, background, I have to go back to the very early days. I was interested in weather as far back as I can remember. And so I would be, probably just early grade school years, listening to my NOAA weather radio, following the forecast on it. And I think a lot of it is, I grew up in Southeast Illinois. I think a lot of it is I grew up on a farm, and weather's just daily talk when you're in the farm agricultural world. So dependent, so reliant on the weather and keeping up with it. It's what do they say? The weather is the thing that everybody talks about, and but nobody ever does anything about it, or something, something to that effect. So it was just a common daily topic. I think here in family talk about the weather, and then my intrigue with severe storms kind of developed from that. So like I say, from the very beginning, liking weather, I went on to Valparaiso University, which is in Northwest Indiana. Back in the day, known for, we just had March Madness. The Bryce Drew shot was when I was going to college at Valparaiso in West Indiana, for the basketball fans out there. And then I joined the National Weather Service. Very fortunate to have a job right out of college. I worked at offices such as La Crosse, Wisconsin, a local National Weather Service office there, in the middle of Nebraska, Hastings, Nebraska. And then, time flies. I've been at the Storm Prediction Center for just about 20 years now. Here at the Storm Prediction Center, just for folks that aren't familiar, just for background, we are a part of NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, part of the National Weather Service, and then we are a national center, such as there are other fellow national centers, such as the Hurricane Center. Folks hear about them. We are a Storm Prediction Center, and so we focus on, we have expertise in forecasting severe thunderstorms that produce hail, damaging winds, and also tornadoes as well. And so we put out forecasts, or outlooks as we call them, out to a week and beyond, out to actually 8 days, 7 to 8 day time frame. And so we try the ultimate goal is to give folks a heads up about severe weather. We can't tell you real exact details about severe weather. Severe weather and tornadoes are highly localized, occur on very small scales. We can't tell about a specific town, county, or anything like that about a week out, but we can kind of in some situations, get indications that severe weather could occur in general regions of the country, say a week out. As we get to a closer time frame, we're able to kind of narrow and pinpoint things down. We work in conjunction with 120 plus local forecast offices around the country. Folks that I work with, real privileged to work with a great group of people. Many of them have way more longevity than I have in terms of focusing on severe storms. We're kind of a destination place people aspire to if they have that severe weather interest. And like I say, we put out those forecasts about a week in advance. And then the other thing that we're especially known for is the issuance of severe thunderstorm watches and tornado watches. We do that out of Norman, Oklahoma, not only for Oklahoma, but actually the whole continental United States. So that's a bit of my background, and it's been a great ride so far, and time flies. But that's a bit of my background there.
Yeah, you really broke it down beautifully, Jared, because, you do have a lot on your plate. It's not just one aspect of weather. You also, too, I can add on the flip side of things, you do cover winter stuff, too, to a degree.
Yes.
Now, it may not be as noticeable or thought of. I think a lot of the people out there that watching the podcast think of their localized National Weather Service and coming out with statements. But you do have a little bit of winter weather to deal with as well, too, right?
Yes, absolutely. Great point, Scott. We do winter weather. We have an expertise because of the severe weather expertise. I think we have a really good eye for observations, kind of mentally keeping track of very subtle things in observations, and that can help us even in the winter weather realm, providing supplemental information expertise to local forecast offices. I think we especially have a knack for assisting in things like snowfall rates, especially. There are what we call convective aspects in a lot of higher end winter weather. And that's something that we certainly have expertise in, where it may not just be things like thunder, snow, and that type of thing, but you can have situations where it's definitely a winter setup, but there are aspects of some of the similar things we look at in thunderstorms that can produce higher end snowfall rates or things like sleet and freezing rain. And so I think we have a good eye for that and try to provide supplemental information for that as well. Also, take a chance to mention we also deal in fire weather of all things. The reason for that, and that's especially for the Western United States, but we also a lot of fire starts, a disproportionate number of them are caused by thunderstorms, and we have an expertise in thunderstorms. So we lend our thoughts to that. So we have a role even in fire weather as well.
Interesting. You know, I forgot about that aspect of that you do a role that the Severe Storms Prediction Center does play in. You know, hopefully there's not going to be too much of that with a lot of wet weather out that way and not exceptionally dry conditions out towards the West Coast. All right, we didn't have much of a winter, especially locally here in the district, in D.C. and surrounding area. So now we are thinking towards spring and summer and severe weather. So basically, can you kind of outline, Jared, different regions of the country that see severe weather at different times of the year? Because it seems like there does become a pattern on a month-to-month basis, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent, excellent lead in there, Scott, in the sense of there are atmospheric patterns. There are, one thing is every day is unique in the weather business. In the science of meteorology. Every day has a uniqueness to it, but yet there are repetitive patterns. It seems like those repetitive patterns can occur on, let's say, weekly time scales, but even monthly and seasonal time scales, maybe even beyond as far as that goes. So every day is different, but sometimes there's a rhythm to things. And severe weather setups very much tend to work that way. So right now, just to give your folks a general overview, right now, severe weather, here we are going from March into April. This time of year, take from the beginning of the calendar year through March, most of the severe weather tends to be focused across the southeast part of the United States. As we start to get into spring, more areas become subject to severe weather risk. Right now, things as far as severe weather goes, risks tend to shake out from somewhere in the southern plains over to the southeast, but now the Midwest starts to become a little more subject to severe weather threats. And we may even see that upcoming here on Friday, where a good bit of the central part of the country up through the Midwest, even towards the Great Lakes, could have a severe weather threat. So we start to see that a little more prevalent this time of year. So severe weather becomes more common in more areas, basically, as we go through the spring. And there's a northward spread to that as well. So even parts of the Mid-Atlantic, where probably most of your viewers and followers are, tends to gradually ramp up. More areas, more likely severe weather. And certainly folks there know as you get into the summer, a lot of pop-up thunderstorms. Some of the stronger ones can bring down trees and the like. And there's oftentimes at least some tornado threat as well in the spring. So in general, as Gulf moisture from the Gulf of Mexico becomes more prevalent, things warm up, and then the jet stream starts to shift north. The main jet stream area shifts from the southern part of the United States northward, and that makes more areas subject to severe weather. I'm going to try a graphic here. I'll see if this works and shows up on the screen.
Okay.
Hopefully it does. But this is where, if folks can see it, this is where severe weather tends to be this time of year. So look at tornadoes. In tornadoes, like I say, across the southern plains, the southeast part of the United States, tornado risk, basically the darker, the more bold colors, the higher the chances of seeing tornadoes, all things equal. More of the southern central plains become more active as we go about a month out. So say the end of April, and also more of the Midwest. And you go out another 30 or 40 days. This is actually looking into June, and really a good bit of the country east of the Rockies at least has some potential for tornadoes. It becomes a much larger playground, if you will, as far as severe weather threats as we steadily go through the spring.
Yeah, so now it was not quite unusual. I'm going to take us back to last weekend because, of course, there were reporters down in portions of Mississippi there covering the massive tornado. So this, what you're saying basically is what happened down there past weekend shouldn't be like an out of the blue situation. This is kind of the time that they would have seen something like, you know, obviously not to that destruction. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of what happened in 1999 in your neck of the woods in Oklahoma with the Moore, Oklahoma tornado. Is this something? How do I phrase this? Is seeing some of these stronger F4s and F5s getting a little more common, or would you say no? Mother Nature balances out, and generally speaking, if you get a tornado, it's more on the F0 to F1 scale.
Yeah, so a great question, a great context. So the vast majority of tornadoes that occur across the country are thankfully relatively short-lived. As a general rough number, the United States experiences, say, 1,400, 1,400 tornadoes as a very rough, generalized number each year. That's highly variable. Thankfully, the vast majority of those, over 1,000 of those, the vast majority, overwhelming majority really, are shorter lived and get rated just EF0, EF1 in terms of the damage that they cause. One thing about those tornadoes is the numbers increased. The number of tornadoes that are documented and reported have increased over time. Most of the upper end tornadoes are actually staying the same. If you look at a long-term, say over the last 50 plus years, the upper end tornadoes are largely remaining the same. Actually, there's been a bit of a lull in terms of EF5 tornadoes or F5 tornadoes. However, there's been a share of EF4 tornadoes. The difference between EF4 and EF5 tornadoes, they're both extremely bad. It's just, some might argue it comes down to some academic differences, but it's obviously when you're talking those upper end tornadoes, that's just, devastation no matter how you slice it, unfortunately. And it's life-changing, sort of events when those impact communities. I was going to mention that the number of EF0 and EF1 tornadoes, those have actually increased. A lot of that is everybody has where's mine here? Everybody has one of these, a smartphone, taking videos. Social media is now obviously very prevalent. People share pictures, or if they see something, they'll send it in. So in some cases in the plains, before we had storm chasers and cell phones and all this, we might be lucky to get a picture or a report of tornadoes. Now you get dozens upon dozens of reports at times in chase season and the like. So a lot of it's the technology, the Doppler radar, and its ability to directly and indirectly detect tornadoes. That's another factor as well. But the upper end tornadoes have largely remained constant over the last, like I say, 50 plus years. EF5 or F5 tornadoes have been a relative lull in those, but F4 tornadoes, I took a few notes here. Last year, we had 4 EF4 tornadoes. We had 3 in 2021, but there's some years, you go back to 2018, we actually didn't have a single EF4 or EF5 tornado. But in general, violent upper end tornadoes, EF4 to 5, somewhere between 1 or 2 a year, typically, to maybe upwards of 8 to 10 combined is a rough threshold. But again, there's a lot of variability in that. Some seasons and years are certainly more impactful than others. And like last Friday illustrates, kind of circling back, there wasn't that day. Arguably, I hate to say, it could have even been worse in terms of more widespread severe weather threats. There was some rain-cooled air that kind of limited the spatial extent of the severe weather threat. So things end up being a touch more localized than what we thought, but yet again, these severe storms, tornadoes are highly localized, and all it takes is just a storm or two, like we saw the other night, to cause long track, long lasting sort of devastation from these long lasting supercell thunderstorms and tornadoes.
Okay. Now, I usually put together some questions for my guests. This one, as you were talking, kind of got spurred in my head here, so I'm going to ask it anyway. You may or may not have an answer.
Yeah.
But locally for the district, Western Maryland, Northern Virginia area, highly populated. Have you noticed any sort of upward trend of tornadoes on a year-to-year basis? Or no, would you say there's, Mother Nature's just doing what she's doing type of thing?
Yeah. In terms of the raw numbers, in terms of the detections, yes, there's clearly an uptrend. Now, how much of that is the factors that I just mentioned about the documentation and awareness? That's probably the lion's share of it, most of the reason for it. But as far as other patterns, changes, sort of things, it's admittedly, it's hard to say. That's probably my most honest answer. But certainly the reports that we get, the Weather Service and emergency management groups have wonderful networks of storm spotters. People are out viewing storms, chasing storms, whether they should be or shouldn't be, and that type of thing. So there's a lot more eyes on a lot more weather, and that gets reported. But it's really hard to say how much is, which factors are exactly responsible.
All right, what would you say, we're getting close to wrapping this up here because I know you're busy. What is the most memorable experience of your career to this point? I know that might be a difficult one because you said you've been with it for 20 years, but do you have a pinpoint experience?
Well, so we see a lot of severe weather here, a lot of, unfortunate situations materialize. The one that's most memorable, stands out, probably my career defining event, is working the super outbreak, so-called super outbreak number 2, which was April 27, 2011, across the southeast, pardon me, the southeast part of the United States. And actually there was severe weather up into the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, for that matter. But super outbreak 1 is the April 3rd outbreak in 1974, but on its heels, a very similar looking setup in the grand scheme materialized in 2011. There were over 300 tornadoes in that event and about 325 fatalities. Widespread severe weather across the Southeast, most notably tornadoes in Mississippi, Alabama. Just a devastating event, and certainly one of the upper end ones that I've ever seen.
Now, you, of course, love what you do, Jared. You're very passionate. We've had a really good discussion here. And of course, people appreciate all the hard work that you guys do at the center. But if you weren't, let's just take hypothetically, if you were not working for SPC, what do you think you'd be doing?
Well, so I gotta say, I'm living the dream. As I established in the first question, that when we were talking about that, it's very privileged to do what I've done, what I've always been interested in. But if I weren't, who knows? It's an interesting question. I did, of all things, I had a minor in music when I went to college. It looked for a while, when I was starting out, the Weather Service was in a lot of weather jobs at the time, but the National Weather Service had a hiring freeze at the time, and things looked kind of challenging. And I didn't know about the career prospects. Always interested in music, that type of thing, and wanted to do like music production, studio stuff like that. Who knows? Maybe I would have done that. I grew up on the farm. Who knows? Maybe the farm would have kept me there or something like that. Also love. I'm a big baseball fan. Uh, if I mention St. Louis Cardinals, that's probably not going to give me much love for most of your listeners in that area. But I respect the Nationals and the like. In their championship a few years ago, was rooting for them. But no, I'm a big baseball fan, and it's a joy. I get to coach my kids right now in terms of baseball and softball, and I've always been a big baseball enthusiast. Love everything about the game, and played it when I was younger and through high school and a little bit beyond, and just love baseball. So maybe I'll be a baseball coach somewhere, and who knows? Maybe I'll do that in my retirement too.
You never know. You never know. Hey, Jared, thanks for being with us here on the Whether or Not podcast. Much appreciated. Be safe, of course, as there, and hopefully we don't see anything similar to what we just saw or what the folks saw down in Mississippi this past weekend. So let's keep prayers for them in our minds and our thoughts. All right, Jared. Well, thank you. I appreciate Jared Geyer, lead forecaster there for the Severe Storms Prediction Center, joining me today on our Whether or Not podcast. And of course, as always, God bless, be well, stay safe, and we will talk to you next week.